Hello and welcome to the driving and highway cruising walkthrough video for my Cars and Bids auction of this triple locked 1997 Lexus LX450. So my interior and exterior walkthroughs took place in a desert lot, and now I am doing some super casual, super easy off-roading just to get back out onto the road. No need to even lock the diffs for how easy that was. But obviously not the fastest truck, but it gets up. Everybody always complains about the power, and maybe it's because they're running 35-inch and 37-inch tires, which these stock axles can totally support, but since I'm still on the stock tire size, I think the truck is just fine. And honestly, yes, it only gets 14 miles to the gallon on the highway, but before I did the tune-up, it got much worse gas mileage. So now it's actually back up to where it was from the factory, and I'm super impressed by the longevity of this engine, still providing tons of power and some pretty decent speed for a 25-year-old 185,000 mile truck. But that's the whole reason why I bought this vehicle back in 2016, was because I knew that it had reliability and longevity, and the only reason why I'm selling it is because of financial hardship due to COVID-19 and work, and the way that the hospitality industry in Las Vegas was impacted. So let's hop onto the highway. I got the AC going, nice and comfortable. Shifts are smooth and punctual. You do get some wind noise from around the mirrors, and then I should also mention that this does have the passenger side shaky mirror, which is a very common thing. People call it shaky mirror syndrome. However, I do not have floppy mirror syndrome, which would be obviously much worse. So it's a little bit annoying, but like I said, I drove across the country with it doing this, and I was still plenty safe to see the vehicles to my sides just fine. Plenty of sight lines through the rear mirror and all of these windows. They don't make vehicles like this anymore that are just so visible. I love all of the sight lines. But the hood deflector, I think, does a good job of reducing wind noise, and it definitely does a good job of preventing stone chips to the windshield. Like I said, I've got one right there, and if I ever got a few more, or if that crack ever spiderwebbed, then I would have replaced the whole windshield and had the seal redone. But as it stands, the reseal job that I did a great job of keeping wind noise out. When I first got the truck, the wind noise at highway speeds was enough to drown out the radio and conversation. So that had to change very quickly. But we'll get off at the next exit here. You can see that at 65, I'm at a little over 2,000. This truck does cruise just fine at 80, and I'll show you that in a second. But I'm sure that for gas mileage purposes, it much prefers to do 65 rather than 85, even though it can definitely do 85. And as a matter of fact, on my trip from Vegas to Connecticut and from Connecticut back to Vegas, there was significant portions of time where I was cruising along at 80, sometimes even 90, sometimes even 100, if it was the wide open areas of the country between Colorado and St. Louis, for example. And the truck handled it just fine, went down the road nice and smooth and true. And I will fully admit that when I was doing 65 or 65 or less, I would definitely get 300, 350 miles out of the tank, maybe even a little bit more. I think I actually got over 400 a couple of times when I was stuck on some more back roads, averaging about 50 miles per hour. But when I was on the highway, I definitely was getting over 300 miles out of a tank at 65, but then would get more like 250, 275 when I was doing 85. So that air resistance definitely makes a huge difference when you're at speed. So I know the forums say that people just keep the power shift pattern pressed down the whole time, and I'll demonstrate that now. And it does make a difference, believe it or not. It shifts from first to second at a much higher RPM. When you don't have power on, it doesn't so much short shifts, because obviously it's only a 4-speed transmission, but it does shift up sooner than when you're in the power shift pattern. And then I've never towed with the vehicle. I don't even own a tow ball for the 2-inch receiver. But a lot of people say that towing requires being in overdrive off, which I could definitely see needing to be in overdrive off for certain areas. But once again, that might also be people that have put 35-inch and 37-inch tires on their Land Cruisers and then are trying to tow with that. And so they probably need that overdrive off button in order to have enough power to pull up hills with those big tires while towing. I really haven't had to use overdrive off to get up hills or anything ever. The second start button, the owner's manual says, is for snowy conditions. And obviously I don't get snow in Vegas, but I haven't had to use that either. With these TAKO2 tires, I have so much traction that I've done snow off-roading. There's some pictures of that on the auction, and I have plenty of traction with the diffs locked or even unlocked, and it's perfectly fine. So I haven't had to use second start. So one good thing about the HVAC system being automatic is that obviously it controls the fan speed and the temperature and stuff. All of the green lights for all of the buttons do light up. It's just the backlit white elements that don't light up. Some of them, like AC, lights up the backlit part, but auto doesn't backlight. You can see that in the interior at night photos, which are attached to the auction listing. So in power, first to second happens at around 3,000 RPMs rather than 2,000. Driver's side mirror is stable, no shaky like the passenger side. And you can see third into fourth holds for a little bit longer while in power mode. 75, 80. You can hear the wind noise gets a little bit more at these speeds, but going down the road nice and easy. So I have been super impressed with this vehicle over the 5 years of ownership and 15,000 miles that I've owned it. In the summer of 2021, when I drove this across the country, I also drove my 2017 Honda CR-V across the country. And I would have to say that the Lexus was more comfortable to drive long distance because the seat is more comfortable and the seating position is higher, and even though I don't have as much legroom in this vehicle, because I'm so upright, my back was far more comfortable in this vehicle than in the Honda. And it's really unfortunate that I have to sell this vehicle, but like I said, COVID and the way that it affected the hospitality industry in Las Vegas has put me into some financial straits, so it's time to sell my baby. But as you can see, on the road driving is great. A little bit of off the road driving that you saw in video is great. If you want to look up Rocky Gap Road or Rocky Gap Pass or Angels Peak Road or Angels Peak Pass, those are two of the more difficult trails that I've done here in Vegas, where I definitely had to use my locking differentials to go up some articulated climbs where I was fully flexed out on my suspension, and the truck handled it beautifully. Crawled right up everything, especially with the diffs locked. And I will miss this truck, but it will make a great overlander for whoever decides to purchase it, and it will be super reliable, just like it has been for me. And the grease guns that I'm providing and the spare parts and tools will make your life with this vehicle even easier. For example, the SLE off-road spindle grease tool is what I used to refill the steering knuckles when I did the steering knuckle job, because you basically attach the spindle grease tool to the spindle, and then using the battery operated DeWalt grease gun, which is loaded up with CV moly grease, you attach that to the Zerk fitting, and then you just pump the steering knuckle full of CV moly grease, and it was super easy and way less messy than having to pack the steering knuckle by hand. But of course, this vehicle does take two different types of grease. The other type of grease that it takes in the wheel bearings and the suspension bushings is wheel bearing grease, which is in the hand pump, because obviously you don't need to pump that one as much. And that has Lucas Oil wheel bearing grease currently loaded up in it. So those were all the spare parts and tools that I always had on hand whenever I would drive the vehicle across country or off-road. And like I said, definitely made my life a lot easier. So it will definitely make your ownership experience a lot easier and more fun. And I hope that you enjoy the truck and get many more years and miles of use out of it. So please feel free to ask me any questions in the YouTube comments or on the Cars and Bids auction listing. But other than that, happy bidding, and to the future winner of this vehicle, enjoy a factory, triple locked, 1997 white, good paint condition, no rust, straight six, fully floating, solid axles, Lexus LX450, and thank you very much. Have a great day.